The idea that our reality might not be the real, fundamental reality is surprisingly old. It didn't start with science fiction movies. It goes back at least to ancient Greece, to Plato and his Allegory of the cave. He imagined prisoners chained in a cave, forced to watch shadows projected on a wall. For them, those shadows were the entirety of reality. They had no concept of the real objects casting the shadows, or the fire providing the light. Plato used this to argue that what we perceive with our senses is just a shadow of a higher, more perfect reality of forms and ideas. Centuries later, the philosopher René Descartes took this a step further. He wasn't thinking about shadows, but about deception. He conducted a thought experiment. What if there was an all-powerful, malicious demon whose sole purpose was to deceive him? This demon could be feeding him all his sensory experiences. The feeling of the chair he's sitting on, the sight of the paper he's writing on, even his own body could all be part of an elaborate illusion. Descartes concluded that he could doubt everything except for the fact that he was doubting. The act of thinking proved his own existence as a thinking thing. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. For most of history, these were purely philosophical exercises. They were interesting ways to think about knowledge and perception, but nobody seriously proposed a mechanism for how such a grand deception could work. That all changed in the 20th century with the invention of the computer. Suddenly, we had a mechanism. We started creating our own digital worlds. They began as simple dots on a screen in games like Pong, but they grew in complexity at an incredible rate. We built flight simulators, intricate social simulations, and eventually vast open-world video games with millions of people interacting inside them. We are on a clear trajectory to creating simulated worlds that are, for the people inside them, indistinguishable from a physical reality. This technological progress is what transformed the simulation question from a philosophical game into a serious hypothesis. The modern version of this idea was most famously articulated by a philosopher at Oxford named Nick Bostrom in 2003. He didn't claim that we are definitely in a simulation. Instead, he presented what's known as a trilemma. He argued that one of three propositions must be true. The first proposition is that civilizations at our stage of development almost always go extinct before they can develop the technology to run highly advanced ancestor simulations. Maybe they succumb to nuclear war or climate change or an asteroid. For whatever reason, they just don't make it to that high-tech stage. If this is true, then very few simulations would ever be created. The second proposition is that advanced civilizations, for some reason, choose not to run these kinds of simulations. Perhaps there are ethical prohibitions against creating conscious beings in a simulation. Maybe they just lose interest and focus on other pursuits. If this is true, then again, very few simulations would exist. The third proposition is that we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. Bostrom's logic is based on simple probability. If the first two propositions are false, it means that advanced civilizations do arise, and they do run lots of simulations of their ancestors. If they run even a handful of these high-fidelity simulations, the number of simulated minds, or simulated conscious beings, would vastly outnumber the single base reality's population. Think about a game like The Sims. For every one person playing the game in the real world, there are dozens of simulated people living inside the computer. If you scale that up to universe-sized simulations, you'd have billions of simulated realities for every one base reality. If that's the case, and you are a conscious being, the odds are overwhelmingly stacked in favor of you being one of the simulated ones, rather than one of the originals. This is the core of the modern simulation hypothesis. It's a probabilistic argument, not a direct proof, but it's compelling enough that people have started looking for clues, for glitches in the matrix, so to speak. And what's fascinating is that some aspects of modern physics seem oddly compatible with the idea of a simulated universe. One of the strangest areas is quantum mechanics. At the quantum level, the world behaves in ways that defy our everyday intuition. For instance, a particle like an electron doesn't seem to have a definite position until you measure it. Before the measurement, it exists in a cloud of probabilities. This is known as the observer effect. The very act of looking at something seems to solidify its reality. This is bizarre from the perspective of a physical, objective world, but from a computational perspective, it makes a lot of sense. A video game doesn't render the details of a mountain range 100 miles away until the player turns to look at it. To do so would be a massive waste of processing power. The game only computes and renders what is being observed. The physics of our universe at the most fundamental level seems to operate on a similar principle of on-demand reality. Then there's the fact that reality seems to be pixelated or quantized. You can't have half a photon. Energy, matter, and even space-time itself seem to come in discrete, indivisible units. The smallest possible unit of distance is the Planck length. You can't have a distance smaller than that. This is strange if you think of space as a smooth, continuous fabric. But if reality is a simulation running on a computer, it would have to have a finite resolution. It would be made of the equivalent of pixels, and the Planck length could simply be the size of that fundamental pixel. Another curious feature of our universe is the speed of light. There is a universal absolute speed limit. Nothing can travel faster than light in a vacuum. Why should there be a speed limit at all? In a simulated universe, a speed limit is not just plausible, it's necessary. It would represent the maximum processing speed of the underlying computer system. The speed of light could be the rate at which the simulation's processor can update the state of each point in the simulated space. This connects to Albert Einstein's theories of relativity. He showed that as an object approaches the speed of light, time slows down for it, its mass increases, and its length contracts. This is often explained with complex physics, but it also has a simple computational analogy. Imagine a character in a video game. The computer's processor has a certain capacity. If that character starts moving extremely fast, the processor has to dedicate more and more of its cycles to calculating the character's new position and interactions. To compensate, it might slow down other calculations related to the character, like its internal clock. This is a simplification, of course, but it's a compelling parallel to time dilation and relativity. The universe seems to be managing a finite computational budget. Beyond these hints from physics, there's what the physicist Eugene Wigner called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. The universe seems to be governed by elegant, discoverable mathematical laws. We can write down an equation on a piece of paper, and it accurately predicts the behavior of a distant star or a subatomic particle. Why should this be the case? If the universe is a simulation, the answer is simple. The universe is running on a computer, and its operating system is mathematics. The underlying reality is code, so of course it would be described by the language of code and logic, which is math. Of course, there are significant counterarguments. The most common one is the question of computational resources. Could a computer, even a fantastically advanced one, possibly have enough power to simulate an entire universe with every single particle and interaction accounted for? The numbers are astronomical and seem to defy possibility. However, proponents of the theory have answers. First, the simulation might not be simulating everything all the time. As we saw with quantum mechanics, it might only render what is being observed. The inside of a distant star might not be simulated in full detail until we point a telescope at it. Second, the base reality where the computer exists might have different laws of physics. Perhaps they have access to forms of computation and energy that are unimaginable to us, making a universe-scale simulation trivial for them. Another objection is the classic "who simulates the simulators" problem. If we're in a simulation, isn't it likely that our simulators are also in a simulation, created by an even higher level of reality? This could lead to an infinite regress, a tower of simulations all the way up. While this is a mind-bending philosophical puzzle, it doesn't actually disprove the hypothesis for our level. Our reality could still be a simulation, regardless of what's happening at the levels above us. A more scientific criticism is that the hypothesis is unfalsifiable. A good scientific theory needs to make testable predictions. If a prediction is wrong, the theory is disproven. But how could we ever definitively prove we are not in a simulation? Any evidence we find, any experiment we conduct, is happening within the simulation itself. The simulators could always change the rules or hide the evidence if we get too close to the truth. Because it might be impossible to disprove, some scientists argue that it's not a scientific question at all, but rather a piece of modern metaphysics. Despite these objections, the idea continues to gain traction, not just among philosophers, but among some physicists and computer scientists as well. They are actively proposing experiments to try and detect evidence of a simulated reality. For example, some have suggested that if space-time is a discrete grid, we might be able to detect slight variations in the behavior of high-energy cosmic rays, depending on the direction they travel through this grid. So far, no such evidence has been found, but the search itself shows how seriously the idea is being considered. Ultimately, we don't know the answer. It's a question that pushes the limits of science and philosophy, but thinking about it forces us to reconsider the nature of reality, consciousness, and our place in the cosmos. If we are in a simulation, what does that mean for our purpose? Are we part of a scientific experiment, a historical reenactment, or are we just an incredibly advanced form of entertainment for our creators? The implications are profound. Even the code of our universe, the fundamental physical laws, might not be immutable. They could just be parameters that the simulators could, in theory, patch or update.